there was a video of training that occurred. I'm pretty sure it was on San Clemente Island because that's where they CS gassed us. And there's guys who are outside and they're getting exposure to CS gas, which I remember before I joined the military, if you look at any movie, probably up to and including like Full Metal Jacket, or if you even went into a recruiting office, exposure to CS gas is something that you do in basic training. Except, I don't know if the Air Force does it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's assume that they do. Probably they don't, but let's assume that they do. It was completely standard and normal to see. And that room sucks. You go into a room, you have a gas mask on, and they make you take it off, and they make you either do something or say something or talk so you can't hold your breath. That's the point of all that. So this video comes out of students that are outside, which one is actually a huge advantage because it dissipates quickly, especially if there's any kind of wind, and they're getting gassed. And there's already issues with the story that I'm telling because one, who the fuck is filming this? Like it just the fact that there was somebody there who was filming this thing and it made it onto the internet in any way, shape, and form is a mistake in and of itself.
So it couldn't have been someone who's in the program.
It
was an instructor.
It had to have been an instructor. So the students, the last 4 weeks of training, you go out to San Clemente Island. It's called third phase. And you get a very basic indoctrination into small unit tactics, rifle weaponry, explosives. You throw some grenades. You do some underwater demo. But you're out there for like the last tight 4 weeks of training. The students, I don't even remember having a cell phone when I went through actually in 97. I'd be shocked if they're allowed to have cell phones on there. So it had to have been an instructor. But they're getting gassed. They're being made to sing Happy Birthday, again, so you can't hold your breath. And it looks horrible. Because it is horrible. And the point of that training is it's supposed to suck. It's supposed to be difficult. You're supposed to be exposed to that in a controlled training environment. People are like, well, this one person looked like they were passing out and there's mucus coming out of their face. Like, yeah, it's CS gas. It sucks. But the first time you experience that shouldn't be in a combat zone. So it's a volunteer-only program. You can leave this particular training block if you want to at any given time. And oh, by the way, every branch of the military exposes their people to this. So although there are people who are saying, yeah, it's too difficult, I think you have to consider the source. I don't think they know what they're talking about.
We expose people to it on Fear Factor.
Yeah. Again, voluntary. And if
Police officers.
And if they didn't want to, I bet you they can be like, you know what, Mr. Rogan, I'm done with this episode. Like, I'm out of here.
So what happened with that particular video?
It made its way onto the internet, and because of what it looks like exactly what it is, a really shitty evolution where you can't breathe. Your sinuses are running more than you ever have had them run in your life. You can't see. You can barely talk. You're choking. You're gagging. Some people throw up, so it made it onto the internet, and people started saying, how could you do that? Like, this is too brutal of training. How could you possibly do this?
That's weird that people on the internet had opinions. So they just had opinions?
Did you just say it was weird that people on the internet have opinions?
Joking. Clearly being sarcastic.
Okay.
But the fact that anybody paid attention to those opinions.
It trended for a while. It actually, not only did they have opinions, it started getting shared. Right? And then it started, the next thing you know, it's on major news outlets. And then I actually think I saw an article saying that the Navy opened an investigation into it.
They have to. At that point, you have to.
They should open an investigation.
So here it is. Yeah. Navy launches investigation into SEAL tear gas video. Newly surfaced video showing Navy SEAL recruits being tear gassed is adding to scrutiny over elite military units' training practices. But you could speak to this, please, because you have to have brutal training.
So you have to layer onto this.
I'm going to say this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I remember going through this in the Marine Corps. I cannot recall that evolution on San Clemente. And I asked somebody here, they're like, oh yeah, it happened. I can't remember it.
We went out into a demo range and they had sprinkled in CS powder into the dirt. So we didn't actually realize we were having an exposure to it. And people were just covered in, I remember I'm sitting there and we were trying to do demo calculations or like cut det cord. And you're like dry heaving. The reason that this is probably the bigger issue is that there was a high profile death in SEAL training not too long ago. With a student who had just completed Hell Week and died in the hospital shortly thereafter. The young man's mother is a nurse, and she's very vocal about what has happened, and there was an investigation involving that. So it seems like horrendous to lose your son in any way, shape, or form. I don't want to take anything away from that, but from that incident, this is like another layer on top of the onion on something that people were already talking about, which you combine the two and it just seems like, for one, I wish SEALs could get the fuck out of the news in general. But since it starts, they're layering on top of each other, it can seem to be a bigger deal than it is.
What did he die from?
Infection.
Yes.
So during Hell Week, you've got open sores. You're in the water, which isn't far from the Tijuana where it drains off. So that's always been a concern, and we mitigate it extremely well. And first off, my condolences to the mother, because this kid was a stud. He was the captain of the Yale football team. He was going to become a SEAL. He passed the hardest.
So was it like a staph infection?
It was a staph infection. And you look at the source.
Bacterial pneumonia.
Yeah. You look at the source. This is all New York Times.
Yeah.
It's a string of reporters from New York Times that have just they've had a hard-on for the SEAL teams. They have been going out. In fact, they wrote a book, and you have the author, Matt Cole, Code Over Country.
Yeah.
And they have just, for the last half decade, if not more, have made it their personal crusade to bring down the SEAL teams. And the Eddie Gallagher incident did not help.